Good afternoon, New York City, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New York City Office of the Public Advocate. We are here on this Halloween day to really raise awareness about holistic approaches to intimate partner violence, domestic violence, and talking about the ways that it shows up in unorthodox, non mainstream uh, manifestations that occur. And so we're here to explore the ways that we can respond with solutions, with community building, and with innovation of our hearts to figure out how we can best have compassion and empathy for a very, very, very serious topic that's often filled with difficult subject matter that we can't approach without sensitive gloves. So we're here to bring that today. And again, I'm thankful to be coming to you live. My name is Solomon Acevedo, he, him pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Public Advocate for Justice, Health, Equity, and Safety here in the Office of the Public Advocate. And I'm going to pass it off to my coworker, my colleague, my esteemed colleague, who I would say is one who is a trailblazer and lights the torch, lights the way for many, many, many individuals in so many settings. So I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Kim Watson Benjamin.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Solomon. Thank you so much. My name is Kim Watson Benjamin. Pronouns she, her, and goddess. I am the LGBT and health coordinator here at the New York City Office of the Public Advocate, Jemani D. Williams, and I'm also part of the Justice, Health, Equity, and Safety team, which, aka the Justice Squad, here in the office, and all the overarching things that we deal with, just like I said, justice, safety, health, and equity. And we come back so many things. I think that this evening we are combating the thing about domestic violence. And one of the things that several people does not amplify is domestic violence surrounding not only the feminine spectrum, but as well as the masculine spectrum. And when we say that, there's a lot of individuals who may be going through domestic violence or intimate partner violence as type A masculinity, and they might be not too vulnerable to talk about it because they feel like they're demasculating themselves. So this evening, we're going to jump into a couple of questions. We're going to make sure that folks probably hear the messages, not see the messenger. And with that, I'll introduce Lori Kim.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us, and thank you for having me here. My name is Lori Kim Alexander. See, my pronouns here are she, we, and us. And I'm a community organizer. I am an abolitionist. I'm a biologist, a naturalist, a conservationist, and a healer. And I'm also a survivor of multiple forms of violence, not the least of which is intimate partner violence and sexual violence. And so I have a lot of knowledge here, personal knowledge about these issues. And, as a femme, I know that a lot of us are 60% of us actually have experienced some sort of sexual violence in our lifetime, who are all of us who are Black femmes. And so that's a reality. But there are a lot of us who are trans, who are gender nonconforming, who are left out of these lists, left out of the data. So we're here today to talk more as folks who are here, living our lives as out and proud folks who are trans, who are queer, and who have experienced this or have, knowledge of how to advocate for folks who are experiencing intimate partner violence or domestic violence. So with that, I want to introduce the panelists here and have them actually introduce themselves and start with our first question. I'm going to ask the question each time, I think. And how do you define domestic violence or intimate partner violence in your particular context, right? And I want to start with Diamond, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diamond Bowling. I'm the community organizer for the Justice, Health, Equity, and Safety Committee at the OPA's office. Um, I would define domestic violence or um, intimate personal intimate violence as a pattern of behavior that is used to maintain or gain power, or the this behavior that also happens between a partner and a spouse, but also as well as happening in the home. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Diamond. And Wanston, can you give us a little intro of yourself? Tell us your pronouns. I see them there, but please tell us your pronouns. And then also ask you the same question. How do you define domestic violence, intimate partner violence in your own context?
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Wanston. Um I am an author. I'm also the COO of House of X Entertainment. I'm also a community advocate. How do I define domestic violence with an intimate partner and within family? I am basically, I would say, someone that has dealt with not loving themselves and also would hurt someone else, they would also keep doing it. So basically, hurt people hurt someone else. So they physically and mentally need that kind of, I would say, to release the pain somewhere.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you for that. You're bringing in the component of, looking at the ways in which we have these interpersonal relationships, but really it's more about what's going on for us and keeping ourselves accountable. And what I'm hearing you say is, there's somebody who's not accountable to themselves, and lashes out at others.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right, Jaisen, would you like to introduce yourself, your pronouns, and answer the same question? How do you define domestic violence, intimate partner violence in your context?
So my name is Jason. I'm the community engagement specialist at Exponents. I my pronouns is he, him, they, them. One thing that would define domestic violence would be disrespect, manipulation can lead into that. Yeah, disrespect, manipulation. I mean, that is somewhat source of power as well as calling names and minimizing somebody's feelings or minimizing their sexuality. And mainly when it comes to a man, usually when it comes to, I'm gonna say it like this: if a woman is constantly doing domestic violence on a man, they could constantly make a man feel less of a man by either calling them the B word or making them feel like they're not as strong as a man's supposed to be.
Amen.
Hmm,
Absolutely.
thank you for that. Um, so, Kim, I would like to ask you that question as well. So, how do you define domestic violence, intimate partner violence in your own context?
Well, in my own context, hi, again, my name is Kim Watson Benjamin. How would I define domestic violence and intimate partner violence? And from my perspective, um, in my own context, I think that for me, domestic violence could come from various stages as well, like the wheel of control, and it can come from whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, or whether it can also be spiritual abuse, like individuals. So for intimate partner violence, it can take to a level of like echoing every what everyone has said, like degrading someone whether it's from their masculinity or feminine side. I think that it would um, help amplify the point of that a person is being abused and understanding not to having a plan. Some folks don't have a plan to get out. So, from my perspective, I'm really focused on the planning process to remove themselves, which can be very, very devastating. And it's a decision that not everyone is capable of making when
Amen.
it comes to domestic violence and intimate partner violence.
Yeah, that thank you for that. Also, go ahead, Solomon.
Can I say something? Yeah. No,
Yeah.
every everyone's answer is, it's funny how we build upon the definition when it comes to something that's so difficult to break down in a definition, more so than it is an experience. And so when I think about, intimate partner violence and domestic violence, I think about imbalance, imbalance of power, and like an it, I want to say like a valve that has not been calibrated properly to release the the negative, or say the uh, spontaneous chaotic energy that exists in our relationships. And how do we, breathe out, the things that need to breathe out in relationship, and the way we would exhale from our lungs, the things that we cannot turn into oxygen. And so, yeah, balance, and finding the balance among ourselves, within ourselves, and among the people that we relate to, is something that, when it comes to power, we often forget, or, don't emphasize as much. So,
That's beautiful. That was poetic, Solomon. Thank you. Yeah. uh, yes, got bars. So, um, but that I really enjoyed that poetic reality that you brought to us, because it emphasizes something that's really true. No matter what ship you enter in with another person, that space can become toxic. And that's what you're saying. Like, if there's no oxygen, then that's a toxic space, right? No one can breathe in that, including the person who is trying to exert their power. So I appreciate that. And for the rest of the panel here, when we're thinking about that, right, that can become embroiled in systemic realities, that can be embroiled in, like, can get caught up in our cultural realities. And so when we think about that, are there any specific systemic or cultural reasons that contribute to the extensiveness that we see here, or underreporting, right? That's another one, because we were talking about data a little bit earlier of domestic violence for Black and Brown, trans, and gender nonconforming people. So I asked that question in a very long way. I'm going to ask it again. Okay. So, what are the systemic and cultural reasons you think that contribute to the high rates of violence and the underreporting of violence, domestic violence and intimate partner violence for trans and gender nonconforming Black and Brown people? I'll start with you, Kim.
Can you repeat that again, Lori Kim? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a long question. So the question is, what do you think systemically, culturally is leading towards not only the prevalence of violence, but the underreporting of violence for Black, trans, and gender nonconforming people, and brown, trans, and gender nonconforming people?
I think that from my perspective, I think that if one of us are not free, none of us are free, and we tends to we tends to hold on the fact that systemically that no one believe us. Doesn't matter how we look or how we carry ourselves. So at sometimes we there's a sentence saying that everything that glitters is not gold. However, and then a lot of people think that we don't have to check in on the strong folks. So systemically, there is a lot of individuals walking around smiling and making sure that things are okay and making things look like they're okay, and avoiding the avoiding the rejection from the system, because the system doesn't believe us. And so, to just say one thing when it comes to the TGNC, transgender and gender nonconforming community, if you are a trans identified woman and you are being beaten or
Mm-hmm.
violated,
Mm-hmm.
the person can call the cops. And from seeing from different experiences, um, when the cops reach to the home or wherever, sometimes the person say, "Oh, you know that person is a trans woman," meaning to out that person, disclosure of that person's identity, and then um the cops, the system does nothing, and it have happened so many times that that's how so many murders have happened, or so much domestic violence have happened, or hospitalization have happened, because they did not believe it when it comes to a trans woman. When it comes to a transmasculine individual, it becomes a mockery and a way of like, okay, you are a man, prove yourself to be a man. And transmasculine individuals refuse to really step up to the plate and say, okay, I'm being abused. And systematically, they will walk in the system and, okay, I'm a man, I'm not complaining about it, and they will continue being abused and suppress all their feelings, and systematically, without even getting a therapist, without even looking for a provider, without even looking for to tell someone their story, without even letting folks know what they're actually going through. So I think systematically we have they have failed us. They have failed us, and we refuse to have rejection continuously in our lives. So a percentage will show that some folks will reveal what they're going through, and some folks would not reveal the embarrassment and the rejection from the system.
Thank you so much for bringing that to light. It is it's true because there are several studies that have showed that over 40% of us, all of us who are trans and queer or LGBTQIA plus, if we want to say it that way, don't report to the police. And if we do report to the police, when they come, they have this mandatory arrest, and they often get the wrong person, right? Jason, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I actually want to add on to what Kim stated, and that is very true because this is why there is a lot of individuals who are currently using substance. People keep thinking that substance is because it's for fun. In reality, a lot of individuals use substance, and then mainly in the community, it comes down to being the trans masculine because of the simple fact that they don't want to be looked at as less of a man, and that goes vice versa as well for the trans woman. A lot of them, they use substance as well because of the fear of when they call the police think that they're lying, or it comes down to even having the fear of more, getting killed. So the system do fail us because this is why right now we have a lot of overdoses in the community because of people trying to numb their emotions and not face the situations that they're going through.
Mm, that is such a good point as well. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation. Does anyone else, Diamond, Winston, Solomon, you have anything you want to add?
Yes. So sometimes the person doesn't necessarily have to. Speaking from personal experience, I come from a Jamaican home. My father was Jamaican. My mother is not, although she was born from the Virgin Islands and everything. And when the parent is basically, how should I say, they're one-minded. They're not open-minded to nothing different. So I was always a very feminine guy. I was timid. I was very soft. So I wasn't doing what the other boys would do or what my other siblings would do. So because I didn't hang around him, or I didn't do stuff with my hands or get myself dirty, I was verbally picked on. So that's another form of domestic violence. And because I wasn't one of those, it's like, okay, that's also another form of it. And sometimes dealing with that and then going into another relationship physically and verbally, you can also be traumatized from that as well. So it can start from home and then, lead on to other things. So acceptance of basically your family or your parent accepting you for who you are is also another source of violence and domestic.
You're muted, Lori Kim.
Thank you.
No.
I'm still learning this platform. So, um, yeah, so what I was saying is that you're bringing in that cultural aspect, and that definitely starts in the home. There are some other statistics that I found that are really shocking, right? So, 16 and up, from age 16 and up, those of us who are trans and gender nonconforming are 51% more likely to experience violence, like any kind of violence, than straight folks, and lesbian and gay folks 43.5%
Mhm.
more, right? And so uh, what you're talking about is um, not only the fact that we experience violence at home, but our reactions to violence as survivors of that violence at home, um, changes as adults as well. How we get into relationships and how we react once there's violence in that in relationship. And also, let's also be clear. A lot of what folks have said today is, you when you hear it, you might say, well, that's not violence. That definitely is violence when someone is trying to control or belittling someone. That's a form of violence, right?
Mhm.
So thank you for that. I want to ask another question of everyone here. So um, what are the specific challenges that Black, trans, and gender nonconforming individuals face when dealing with domestic violence? So, Kim, you touched on it quite a bit, and thank you for that in terms of the system. Are there other systemic issues or cultural issues? Watson, you touched on the cultural issues.
Whew.
Jason, you
Yeah,
did too.
it's a list because
Mm,
I mean, you scared to say something, you scared to speak to somebody in public while the person is around. Um, Especially if you live with the person, you do something wrong or you don't make up this right or you don't do the food right, you're scared to do anything that would piss the person off. And sometimes, depending on what the situation is, you're stuck there until you actually say, okay, enough is enough. So it's like, it's a long list of many different things that you can do or that person could do. So it's so many different things because your fear of this would happen again, your fear of, is this person going to do this, or this might happen again. So it's so many different things. You don't do this right, you get cursed out. You do that wrong, you still get cursed out. Or so it's so many different things.
yeah, thank you for that. So that's one way. Solomon.
I think, we live in a hateful climate, and that has become normative. And I don't think that we're very far removed from the abstract hatred that really comes from colonization and being stripped of identity. And, I'm not a person who is trans, but have stood at many rallies and many vigils and walks and marches. And some of my people that I'm with experience like the real fear of being attacked by strangers. And this is just in the general perspective of how people look at people who identify publicly as trans. And I remember walking across the 149th Street Bridge with Kim during one T-Door vigil a couple years ago, and just like young teenage boys, like expressing aggression and hatred towards people they don't even know. And I think about how much more that can become internalized and then externalized when engaging in a relationship or being involved in a situation where they have to respond to someone in need who identifies in that way, and not taking that person's concerns seriously because of the way they don't take their identity seriously. And I can tell that if a complete stranger is willing, to feel confident in belittling another human being based on how they identify, how much more a conditioned, trained individual whose job is to enforce law and arrest black and brown people would be, how much empathy would there be if there's no conditioning for that? And I think that that's a deep part of what we experience when it comes to intimate partner violence and as it relates to the black trans community, speaking as an accomplice. So
Thank you for that, Solomon. Diamond, I saw you nodding. Do you have anything you wanted to add, or not to put you on the spot or anything?
Yeah. I think that what Solomon is speaking about is really just a lack of safe spaces, and a lack of safe spaces in the home, in society, and in your relationships. And I think that is why we do see a lot of underreporting. Um, just because a lot of people can be very ignorant, and just the fear of not knowing, like, okay, is this person looking at me as a person, and not feeling safe enough to be vulnerable about such a serious issue. I think that that's very evident in the numbers that we see, and why there's so much underreporting. So
Anyone else want to add to that regarding underreporting in particular?
I would say a lot of people try to meet social expectations in which it could lead them into fear to gain to removing themselves from the situations. Some of them may get so used to it and say, okay, this makes me feel like I'm able to pass in the community. So you know what, let me stay with this person. Not realizing that I understand social expectations. Everybody want to meet them, but that can really it could cost somebody's life. And what I say by that is a lot of these reports that have not been reported is because of fear of not, being looked at differently. Once again, especially being trans, and all everybody who's trans, we all try to match those social expectations, and when we don't, we feel like we're judged by the community, by the ones, the chosen family, the loved ones. So it mainly has to do the social expectations that really lead into a lot of unreported cases.
Yeah, thanks for that too. Um, One of the things that I found interesting too about when we think about reporting, right? There's agencies in New York City that are not looking for trans people and gender nonconforming people in their reporting. Um, you have man, woman as an option, and that's it. And so wanted to understand that more, for the folks who have dealt with that in terms of reporting. Is there anything that we may want to add around those things? Okay, well, no one's dealt with that in terms of reporting. I can tell you, personally, I've tried to help people navigate some of the forms, some of the things like that to get support. And it's very difficult because if you're someone who's non-binary, you don't have really an option to be counted when folks are talking about the tally of violence, right? So that's something that systemically could change in terms of advocacy, as well as helping folks feel more comfortable to come forward, I think. um, that's just my 2 cents, but
Yeah.
uh,
One
go
thing I
ahead.
want to add, I mean, I agree with you 100%, Lori Kim. Reporting and counting individuals' identity and identifying is something that structurally our city is behind on. Recently, uh, the public advocate had passed a piece of legislation around reporting, and this is for gender nonconforming, transgender and nonconforming individuals who are housed on Rikers Island to keep track of where they are. And I think that's been a big step in the right direction in terms of how we can begin to control the reduction of violence by first understanding who people are and where they are. And although it may seem like a minor thing when we talk about rebuilding, systemic problems, it has to start with first identifying who the people who desire and need transformation the most are, and keeping track and making that something that everyone can know and access. And when we normalize that, I think we're able to kind of speak directly to what the numbers really say and what the experiences of people really are. But yes, totally agree that we can do better, and people who have engaged our office have expressed those difficulties about the categorizations and how we can do better in terms of giving people options for identity. So thank you for that one.
I also wanted to jump in and and stepping about not only be I know that when we talk about domestic violence and maybe highlight stuff like that, we are here and some of us identify as who you are, masculine from feminine. However, I just want to really take it to a point like there are so many cis heteronormative individuals out there that are dealing with domestic violence and intimate partner violence and not speaking up. There are so much individuals out there that are being attacked and violently, whether it's on domestic violence and intimate partner violence, and actually folks are identifying them as trans individuals. So transphobia and homophobia um is such a violent act, and here in the city or in the world that even heteronormative individuals are getting mistaken for identifying if they're identifying as trans or not. And then a lot of cishet men are not stepping up to the plate and talking about the violence that they are enduring and they are experiencing in their households, in the workplace. A lot of individuals are not speaking up. And I don't know how to counteract with that. I don't know how to find a path. But this evening, this panel was is here, not was, but is here to send a message to those individuals out there that if you are being violently attacked or you're in a domestic violence relationship or into intimate partner violence relationship, make a plan. Make a plan how to get out. It's okay. It's okay to start over. It's okay to start over. It domestic violence could start with many levels, like financial, housing. You know, there's a lot of economic status and stuff like that, and there's a whole list that causes domestic violence. They have a lot of egotistical folks out there that because of the ego, domestic violence happens. A lot of folks don't realize that their verbal content is violent. They don't realize that. So, I just want to amplify the fact that we can look around. It is all around us, and folks are not speaking out. Folks are not giving themselves the opportunity to saying, okay, I'm a victim. Everybody want to be a hero. No one want to say, I'm a victim. I am experiencing this. No one want to talk about it. Folks may lead to LGBT and Q plus and TGNC and B, but I must open up your hearts, open up your minds, send a message to you to let you know that it is not only the LGBT and TGNC and B individuals who are dealing with domestic violence and intimate partner violence. There's a lot that's happening. Look at the media, look at the celebrities, look what they're dealing with. And then if they do talk about it, folks want to point the finger at a specific gender or specific person to identify or the person's character of learned behavior, whether they be passive or aggressive, that's kind of things. So I just want to really amplify that part when it comes to domestic violence and intimate partner violence.
Thank you for that, um, Kim, and thank you for centering, centering the survivors in this conversation. Um, that's who we should be centering. You're right. Um, Also, the idea about making a plan, right? That's how I got out. That I had to plan for about 2 years, but that's how I got out. Um, and it doesn't matter how long it takes you, as long as you start, right? Does anyone want to speak to anything that Kim had mentioned just now? Anyone want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I thank you, Kim, for again centering people who go through the experience. I think a lot of times, and even in this conversation, we kind of have so normalized the experience of interpersonal violence that we kind of already know what's going on and what the root causes are, but a lot of people don't, and which is why I kept emphasizing identity. Don't really think about how they get into a place where they are in a relationship that contains abuse. Um, it's very difficult to distinguish when you are crossing the threshold into abuse because oftentimes relationships that do become violent are ones that are filled with deep connectivity where people feel extremely close to the person that they're with, almost inseparable to that person, many times because of the way that they connect is usually each person is coming from an experience of trauma that they're linked to that they haven't yet processed. And in the attempt to try to make sense of their own self, they're actually damaging the other person unknowingly often, uh, but not in every case. So, and it could become so ingrained and enforced as a pattern that we begin to think like this is how we should behave to get through to what we want to gain from the relationship. And I think that emphasizing the importance of self-worth and why there's such a disproportionate impact on people who are LGBTQIA identifying because of the reasons of the challenge to identity that exists every day for people who identify that way in such an aggressive, violent manner. It's even more difficult just to be a person every day, and how much more challenging to be a person and then be in a relationship that the society is coming at as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of factors that we don't think about, but just wanted to highlight that the root of a lot of our interpersonal problems comes with how we view ourselves, and that's wrapped up in the way that our society is structured and designed, particularly for Black and brown bodies, not to be loved, not to identify their own worth, and not to see the limitations of our ability to bond. And it's a painful thing to recognize that you're unable to really be the whole person you want to be, but it's something that we need to confront and work through rather than suppress and submerge, which is what we do. We're like, oh, what happens? I don't want to get involved, or that's they're just like that. Some of us may have friends in relationships that are highly volatile, and we may want to inject ourselves, but we feel like there's no way to be a mediator because of the patterns that other people, establish that we can't relate to. So, yeah, I echo the fact that we should be lifting up those people who are having a difficult time right now, today, figuring out what to do about tomorrow's circumstances. So, yeah, to everybody listening, there's pathways out, but I think we'll get to that in a second.
That was going to be the next question there. Yeah. So, um, you know, the biggest help we could do for someone, or we can give someone who's in these situations, is to ask, what do you need right now? Because a lot of times we don't think of it, right? So that's one thing that I would love to ask folks, like, what do we need as organizations, as advocates? What resources do we need to advocate for survivors? And what resources, if you are a survivor, um, on the panel, in the comments, what resources did you need? Do you need? Let's think about that. And I'll open that up to anyone who wants to start.
Um, I would say basically a listening ear, because it takes a healing process when someone has been through something like that. More more groups or a supportive system for people to listen to, because it takes a healing process for someone, whether if they were abused or they went through it. It takes time for that person to feel themselves again, feel worthy, build their self-esteem back to themselves. So it somewhere like a healing journey would have to take place.
Thank you. Anyone want to add to it?
I would say a safe space and patience, because what may work for you and it may not work for everybody else. And when it comes to domestic violence, some of us will leave and some of us will not leave. So I will always say have patience.
Beautiful.
I think that everyone.
We lost Kim.
Uh-oh.
Well, in the meantime, yeah, I think we definitely need more uh, just instilled curriculum around healthy communication. I think a lot of our difficulties come from not understanding how to express the way that we feel with the right words. And we get caught into situations that we normally wouldn't, because we can't find the right words to express ourselves, or we don't have, as Diamond was mentioning, the safety of a space in our home to take a minute, to take a breather, to maybe not have this difficult conversation right now at this moment, to not reinforce like communication, the passive aggressiveness. Many times in relationships that end or create violence have to do with people just throwing the same energy back and forth, that is just miscommunication magnified. And I think that's something that we all need help with as people, and it shouldn't be distinct. Your own growth as an individual shouldn't be distinct from your growth in a relationship. And I think we kind of romanticize and idealize relationships in our society in such a way that it doesn't make it real for us to learn how to make real partnerships with people work. And I think that we should be doing that intentionally early on in our public schools, in our everyday after school programming that takes place. That if we can watch The Lion King for an afternoon, we can also, have a informative workshop on how to best speak to people. So that's one thing I would suggest.
Love that. A way to transform harm. Kim, you're back. Do you?
it's the movement. It's the movement. I would not say, but I think that everyone healing process is so different. Um, the things that I may ask for and look for, it might not for another person. And I think that when a person I think that sometimes a person, the same way how we have learned behaviors from when we were children, I think that we can watch and understand that those we can have those behaviors and have attributes that we can turn a negative into a positive. I like I said, everybody healing process is different, and it is easy said than done. However, I I'm always willing not only for myself as well as for others is to actually provide spaces and safe spaces for individuals to to speak to for me to have a listening ear and stuff like that. So when we talk about having resources, there's so many resources out there that instead of learning or putting so much energy in an unhealthy relationship, try to find a opening, a door, a vessel where you can build a healthy relationship. However, put you first. It could only begin with you. Everything starts with you without a revolving door. Every door starts with you to enter to make sure that anything that can be unhealthy, you can turn it into a healthy relationship, a healthy anything. So I feel like looking for resources can be really valuable. However, it would be helpful to individuals and I know it's hard to trust individuals. There is a whole trust situation, and you don't ever want to be talking off a person's ear and then it turns into something because sometimes on coming from an unhealthy relationship, so much toxicity can be put into that you go from one unhealthy relationship to another, and the toxic traits, you may be attracted to toxic traits. So when we talk about resources, be careful how you scout around for these resources, and to you thinking that they're healthy resources or building healthy relationship when it might be that is you attracting yourself to all the toxicity and the unhealthiness around you or away from you. So you have to be careful with that. And I think that the first biggest resource that you should build is within yourself. You should start loving yourself and put so much into yourself. Let that volcano and lava spill over on you instead of trying to out there trying to find something because you may end up back into another toxic relationship. So you have to be careful. And toxic relationship meaning not personal, it can be just friendship, stuff like that. And you have to be careful how you look for stuff when you can look for that within yourself. Try to find that within yourself. You know, Right, journal. Do something that would say, "I love me. This is for me." Do affirmations for you before you reach out to others.
Amen.
Hmm. Breaking those patterns is a beautiful way to love yourself. I really love all of that, all those ideas you gave folks. Anyone have any more ideas for um, self love resources in that way? And again, I'm going to open it up to the folks watching. If you want to put in the comments, any ideas you have or questions you have for the panelists. Also wanted to ask again, just go back to advocacy too. Um, because a lot of the times when we're on the outside, we can see what's happening. People inside, they're just like they can't see it, and then you don't know how to break that. You know.
Yeah, I definitely think, and this is true for most issues that we have when it comes to a person transforming their life, peer led navigation, the systems that engage people who are survivors of violence are not always the most friendly. And a lot of the process of reporting violence, going and receiving services for those things, especially if you have children involved in this domestic dispute, kind of leave you in a space of feeling like just another number, and often re-trigger you and your experiences of being alienated or being unseen or unemphasized as an individual for your own importance as a human. And so having someone who has lived experience to help guide you through that, I think is necessary. I think we also need to make some changes in the way that we deliver services for people who experience intimate partner violence. I don't think it's always the best idea to send law enforcement as the first wave of engagement when someone's in a very difficult setting. I think often it causes more conflict, and for people who may not be of the same culture, who speak a different language, that police officers don't speak when they are engaging you. They may come to a deeper misunderstanding that creates a whole nother situation of harm that's not even domestic violence. And so I wonder how we can explore better ways to expand initiatives like the Brownsville Safety Alliance, which just a few summers ago was very integral in being the first responders in collaboration with NYPD to calls that were related to domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and allowing people with the experiences and the professional skilled know-how and the counseling background to be able to see the signs of violence, to see the patterns that are taking place in this brief interaction, and then to really recommend the right connective service. And I think that also still needs to be supported by someone who's not in your relationship and maybe not in your family life, who can give you those objective perspectives that we may not see when we're dealing with a situation that's just so emotionally involved we can't even see our own selves. So I would definitely say peer navigation is key. We need to fund more of those services and embed them within the law enforcement response system so that we don't rely on people who are not specifically trained to do a service to do the service.
Very good points. I'm just gonna just start going through the panel, so because we're coming close to our time, and but anything anyone want to add to that, just as I call you, let me know, or if there's something you want to say in closing. So I'm gonna start with you, Jason. Anything you want to add, or anything you want to say in closing?
I'm gonna stay in close. I have to fully agree with Salomon because it's just can't nobody do any type of work without the experience. You can't help somebody else if you do not have the experience or gone through the experience. To me, I would always say to always make sure that when you're having these cases, make sure that the people who have experience are the ones assisting those who are currently going through the situation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Diamond, did you want to add on?
Yeah, I think that that definitely speaks to representation in terms of those who do outreach when it comes to domestic violence. I think representation is
Hmm.
very important because um, people feel more comfortable when they see someone that looks like them and or has experienced the same things that they have. And I think that that's one of the really important things that we need in order to, promote these safe spaces and promote people reporting the things that they're going through.
Absolutely. Winston, did you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I can. I also wanted to piggyback on Diamond's thing and just to shorten it and also pose a question maybe for the next time. To us and a lot of folks, what does domestic violence look like? Because domestic violence can look like me, you, and anybody else. Because the person can have a pretty face and look so gorgeous, but behind all of that, they're hurting. Also, have we thought about if the person is stuck in their situation because they have nowhere to go? So, a lot of times, what I would say is to be the person's confidant to try to help them get out of their situation. But the only way that they will get out if they are ready. You can coach them, you can talk to them, you can be there the best way you can. They have to make the first step to say, okay, enough is enough. And that's basically how I would put it.
Absolutely. If folks aren't ready, they're not ready.
Yeah, because a lot of times some folks are stuck into the situation because that person is their financee or that person is
Mm.
their shelter. So they feel if they leave, okay, I have nowhere to live. I have no resource. I have no apartment. I have no nothing. And, you know, they don't want to go back to wherever.
Right. Or vice versa. You could be the breadwinner, right? And you're taking care of that other person, and as horrible as that person is treating you, you don't want that person to falter. You don't want that person to end up in the street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So sometimes, we might coach and talk to the person, but they have to say, okay, I'm done with this. I deserve better. And also, we also
Mhm.
have to think about, when we say reporting, I'm speaking from experience. I never reported none of my stuff. I just let it go and I healed, because you also have to think about the type of person that did the abusing. And if that person, even if you report it, do you want the victim to be dead or do you want the victim to be alive? So reporting it, how much damage are you going to cause? You know? So sometimes dealing with it is maybe the best way.
Hmm. Solomon, we can't hear you even though you're unmuted. Still can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on.
There's a separate mute button. These
Oh.
these headphones these days, technologically advanced. Um, and I was gonna piggyback on what Austin was saying around, not reporting. Back to the point I had been making around law enforcement and the trustworthiness of that, or the unpreparedness of the individual to embrace that, or not wanting the other person to face consequences. There's other avenues like mediation that is not law enforcement based, that can also be super helpful. There's practices of restorative justice where people can actually have a real confrontation regarding accountability without having violence or perpetuating further violence through the court system, which often is just another mechanism for retaliation that people use against each other, putting restraining orders against each other, but never really getting to the root goal, which is, to bring harmony to that relationship and restore balance. And so, how can we explore other techniques that go beyond penalizing what we call or label the perpetrator, but how can we really transform everybody involved? And that may not mean that people have a clean slate with each other in terms of how they trust and how they draw boundaries, but it allows that release that I mentioned at the top of that valve of pressure, of rage that doesn't really get an outlet when there's no affirmation or being listened to by the other party. So just throwing restorative justice out there for the folks who promote that, and hopefully we can integrate that more into all of our spaces institutionally in the city.
Thank you for that. Yes, snaps to seeing restorative justice being implemented throughout the city, throughout the world. This is our ancestral birthright. We've been doing that as indigenous cultures for thousands of years. It's not news, but it is new to some of us. So, yeah, we should definitely look into that if we don't know more about it. I'm looking at the time is 5:01. Kim, did you want to close us out with anything else you wanted to talk about?
I want to say thank you. Um, yeah, I'm so grateful and I'm greatly appreciated for all of you joining on this platform today and making sure that a message get across the land and to different backgrounds, and hoping that folks heard a message and we can we can really convey and bring this back probably in November as well. Um, this is amazing. Yes, this is amazing, and I hope that folks were able to start cleansing in a way, and cleansing in a way and understanding that the process of the healing begins today, and within this hour, this process, they give them choices to say no, I will not continue this, and this process help them to start packing a bag if they do not leave, but start packing a bag of essential stuff and making that plan to leave. Because, and also not because, not for, however, comma, is to have an understanding is, do I really want to stay in this circle or do I really want to go? What are my choices in life? Because some choices can end up to total the mental health can get worse if that's what you're dealing with. Or do you want to be alive today, or do you want to for folks to be crying over you, God forbid, in death?
Amen.
Is that what you need? So today message from me is, I want you to sit and think and marinate about our conversation today. If it was valuable for you, if it was a way for you to open a door of peace at some level in your heart and in your mind to speak up, doesn't matter the consequences. Are you ready to start over? Is my question. Are you ready to begin another path, not for everyone else, not for someone else, but for you? Are you ready to heal? Those are my three questions. And again, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you, New York City. You can't have a better ending than that. Domestic violence, intimate partner violence is a very serious issue that takes lives. Every minute, uh, 20 people per minute in our country are experiencing domestic violence. That means over the last hour, over 120 people have become newly initiated into this traumatic experience. And we hope that people can listen to this conversation, glean some advice, glean some pathways towards getting some support, but more importantly, to educate ourselves and to learn from each other and to let each other know that we heard about this, we care about this, and then we're going to show up for each other in community. So thank you all once again for joining. Thank you, Jaisen, Wanston, Diamond, Kim, Lori Kim, and New York City for tuning in and having this conversation with us. Many more to come. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your Halloween. No tricks, just treats. Peace, y'all.